face me, I face you. Hold me, I hold you. Rock me, I rock you. Do me, I do. If you face me, I face you. Hold me, I hold you. Rock me, I rock you. Do me, I do you. Face me, I face you. Oh, yeah. I no go run away.
Hallelujah, Chimney, Jehovah to me, Mena, a big Waramaria Jimne, Agamaturigan Mama. Hallelujah, Chimney, Jehovah to me, Mena, a big Waramaria Jimne, Agamaturigan Mama. Hallelujah, Chimney, Jehovah to me, Mena, a big Waramaria Jimne, Agamaturigan Mama. Hallelujah, Chimney, Jehovah to me, Mena. The big world of Radune, I'm not to remember. Every name, everyone you know, what time is here, but I'm not to remember. Every name, everyone you know,
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please can we take our seats, please? In the next 2 minutes or thereabout, His Excellency the Vice President will be here. Let's settle down, please. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please shall we all rise now to welcome His Excellency the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The national anthem, please. Thank you very much. Thank you. Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, SAN, GCON. Let me welcome Your Excellencies, the governors that are here in our midst this morning, particularly Your Excellencies, the governors of Ogun State and Kebbi State. Your Excellencies, we welcome you. I'd like to welcome the honorable ministers that are here with us this morning. Let me welcome the chairman of the NESG board and other board members of the NESG. I'd like to welcome very specially the president of the Dangote Group, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, and all the captains of industry and CEOs that are here with us this morning. Members of the diplomatic corps, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is with pride and great pleasure that I welcome all of you to the second day of this amazing summit. Yesterday was beautiful. We were decorated with the presence of His Excellency the President. Dr. Doyin Salami gave us the state of the economy, and then we had an absolutely insightful policy dialogue with His Excellency the Vice President. And in all of that, it just occurred to me that the dramatic slide of the economy into recession, so many people have ideas. Economists would tell us that when you begin to enthrone liquidity as king and reduce fixed costs and increase flexibility and so many other themes that goes with economic analysis, it might work. But yesterday my eyes were open that when we look inwards and ensure that we patronize made in Nigeria, we could be on our path to growth and development. So it is with pleasure that I welcome all of you this morning, and the focus really will be on job creation, skills, and employment. And we're really happy that all the people that to play a role here are indeed seated. Let me first and foremost welcome our moderator this morning, a woman who has done this absolutely well in the past years. I'd like to welcome Ms. Kadaria Ahmed, Director of Daria Media. You're welcome. I'd like to welcome here His Excellency Ibikunle Amosu, Governor, Ogun State. And also here with us is the man that has been feeding us with rice and a lot of cows. I welcome the Governor of Kebbi State, His Excellency Abubakar Bagudu. The president of the Dangote Group, so that when we have the Indomie, the cow can go on top. Elijah Aliko Dangote is also here with us. Let me welcome Mr. Jay Ireland, President CEO, General Electric Africa. It's therefore with honor and pleasure that I welcome here His Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. And now that we're all seated, our moderator takes over from here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all other protocols observed. Good morning and welcome to this plenary session on job creation, skills, employment, in the presence of His Excellency, the Vice President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, and also our distinguished panelists. We will discuss today one of the critical issues in Nigeria's consciousness, unemployment and the national job creation agenda. The National Office of Statistics says 26.8 million Nigerians didn't work in the last few months. Unemployment is apparently most acute among young people. About 10.6 million of them are without work. And the recession that we're in is likely to worsen the situation. The federal government has said that its philosophy on job creation is based on a sustainable collaboration with the private sector, and that in 3 years, it wants to create 3 million jobs in 5 key economic sectors. The roadmap for the delivery of these jobs in technology, wholesale and retail, construction and infrastructure, and agric and agro-allied industries and renewable energy has been developed in partnership with the UK Department for International Development, DFID, and has been endorsed by the Nigerian Economic Summit group by the Job Creation Unit, which sits in the office of the Vice President. For this session, what we are going to try and do is examine measures, interventions, and responses that both the government and the private sector and civil society are taking to address unemployment and underemployment. We want to assess the adequacy and limitations of these measures and interventions, and also look and see what the strategic priorities should be in the light of our Made in Nigeria agenda. So, without wasting any more time, let me start with His Excellency, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. Sir, could you tell us a little bit more about this framework that has been developed by the Job Creation Unit and what it is exactly that the government is trying to do around job creation and skills acquisition?
Thank you very much. That's about the whole, that's about the question is about the whole of this round table. So I'm just going to try and skirt around the issues, and hopefully all members of the panel will be able to fill in the gaps. What it is first that there is a job creation unit in my office, and that job creation unit actually has worked out a framework with the NESG. And basically, we're looking at 3 important sectors. We're looking at agriculture and the agro-allied value chain. We're looking at construction and ICT and technology. With the agric and agro-allied, I'm sure that His Excellency Governor Bagudu will be able to give us some further insight. With respect to agriculture and agro-allied, we're looking at how to create opportunities in agriculture, especially in the areas that government intends to be self-sufficient. those areas, the types of produce being rice, wheat, and in some sorghum, soybeans, cashew. There are quite a few of those areas. Tomatoes. But if you take rice, for example, I mean that's an area where we think that there's a lot to be done and can be done very quickly. We think that jobs can be created, a large number of jobs can be created in farming as well as in the whole value chain, from milling to storage, and of course the whole farm to market or farm to table, depending on how one looks at this. Then there's a series of opportunities in the agro-allied industry itself: the processing of cashew, processing of tomatoes, processing of various crops that we've looked at and we think will work. In construction, we're tying this to the social housing program of the federal government. Now, I'm not so sure whether you've heard about the Family Homes Fund. The Family Homes Fund is actually a financial intervention into social housing. We are trying to raise a fund which will come to about ₦1 trillion. And already we have money to aggregate funds from the private sector, from funds, local and international funds. And the whole idea is to be able to intervene in mortgage financing so that developers can actually use this fund to build social housing to the specifications of the government. Already about 8 or 9 states have given land and have actually given certificates of occupancy for this social housing scheme. The idea is that any Nigerian who can afford 30,000 naira a month ought to be able to own a home. Now, the job creation opportunities there, of course, immense. We're looking at technicians, tile layers, bricklayers, all manner of jobs, engineers, the whole spectrum of jobs in the construction industry. And we think that training of these individuals, Alhaji Dangote is one of the private sector people that has offered training for this particular project. So a lot of training of technicians, artisans, and all of that will take place here. So it's a skills to job, skills to enterprise type arrangement, which we think will benefit a great deal from this social housing fund. Then, of course, there's the ICT and technology. I think I should just stop at this point so we don't.
Okay.
Yes.
So His Excellency is basically started talking about a whole value chain that is going to be created based on this framework that they've put together. But before we sort of go into the details, Excellency Governor of Kebbi State, if I could ask you, we've had previous governments talk about creating jobs, and they've tried to do that during a period of growth. We're actually now in a recession. Does the recession give us an opportunity to actually create jobs, or is this just us, dreaming and thinking that this is possible, in your view?
Thank you, Your Excellency. I think it creates more of an opportunity, but we have to start appreciating that the thought process needs to change. If the thought process about the recession we are facing is that it's going to go away tomorrow and oil prices by some miracle are coming back to where they are, and that's what we are waiting for, then it will not help us. But I think, and it ought to be that we should take it as an opportunity, that this is the moment we are waiting for, so that we can run with it and create the destruction that we have always wished we can achieve. Economic agents are there to be mobilized across the country. What is essential is identification, aggregation, and encouraging such economic agents, because most of them do not have the ability to link their interest with the opportunities that recession provides. And that's the role for the state, I guess, whether local government or state governments or federal government, to find these economic agents and provide for them such elements of externalities that the private sector will not provide, maybe training. We have found a group of young men and women who are willing to go into rice farming, but they know nothing about rice farming. But once they were identified and they were introduced with people who can take them through, they were very happy to participate and partake in it. So I think across the country, from Lagos to Sokoto, there are people who, with 20,000 naira, they can start something tomorrow. And that is one of the uniqueness of our circumstance, that our economy can support that kind of mobilization. Other countries are not so lucky. I believe we can, like the experience in Kebbi, where over a 3-month period, which is the wheat season, October to February, we have seen people, we have seen about 70,000, at least about 70,000 new jobs created, because it takes about 3 people to work a hectare. And most of these are new jobs. They are not pre-existing farmers. So I believe in all aspects of our economy, this can be true.
Your Excellency, Governor of Ogun State, from the perspective of Ogun State, some of the priority sectors that the Vice President was talking about, for example, agriculture, is also something that is important to a state like Ogun because it's also agrarian. Tell us of what your experience is around trying to generate jobs using this particular sector and what you hope the engagement will be with the private sector.
Well, thank you, Kadura. Let me thank the NSG that they've invited me to participate in this very important discussion. But let me say that it is not just about Ogun State. Indeed, all of us in Nigeria, all the states, indeed, it's in our interest to make sure that we create wealth, we employ our youth particularly, because what is out there, I see it every day. We have able-bodied men that has the zeal, men and women that they want to work when there's no work. Some of them that even want to work, they do not have the necessary skills to even do the work. But for me and for us, because we do this peer review, all we try to do is to key into what the federal government is trying to do, particularly in their social safety nets. We have these our 5 cardinal programs. But what we've done is to be sector specific and pick maybe agriculture that will lead us to industrialization. We don't just want to farm. Whatever we grow, we want to process. We want to take full advantage of the value chain that agriculture offers. And with that now, we notice that our youths are now being employed. I'll give you just 1 or 2 examples so that you will see that if we walk our talk, indeed it is during the time of recession now that these challenges that is facing us, that we will have the opportunity to even do more than even when we are not in recession. Because of what is happening, we encourage our young ones, particularly the young graduates, even those ones that are not graduates. What did we do? We call all of them together. We ask ourselves, who are we in Ogun State? Yes, we used to be agrarian. We can still do that. But we realize that we have some other opportunities. And that's why we encourage, we create an enabling environment for all of this private sector to thrive. Because we know that ultimately, it has to be private sector driven. If you are going to develop, if you are going to grow, even if you are going to create this much needed wealth for our people.
Okay, so let's bring in the private sector.
No, I've not finished, please.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So that I've not finished, please. So quickly, I'll round up. So what did we do? We got our youths together. We asked them to come. We gave them land, maybe 1 hectare, 2 hectares. We built a place for them. It is a model farm. So they live there with us. So we gave them money. We went to Bank of Industry, BOI. We put down 500 million. They put another 500 million. We try with that 1 billion. You won't believe what that one gives us. Of course, in the first instance, we employ about maybe 3,000 of them. And each one of them, in turn, some 5 people, some 10, depending on what they're doing. Today, all the things that they produce in that place is sold out. They cannot even cope. So what does that tell us? It tells us that if we work our talk and we have the much needed finance, of course, we will employ so many of them. But the truth is this, all the banks, they're not supporting us. Even the one that they're doing, at 12%, how can anybody break even with that. We have to subsidize it and reduce it to 9. Even now, they're asking for 6. And for them to get it right, it must be like that. So let me appreciate what the CBN is trying to do now. They've just, under the tax arrangement, they've just given, I think, 5 billion now, which we are about to assess. And once we are able to get that, of course, we increase what we are doing. Even in the housing that the Vice President said, just look at what is happening. We are using our own people to do the job. Yes, they may not get it right in the beginning, but now you will see about 500 people, 1,000 people working at different sites that we have.
Okay, and for me, what Alhaji Aliko, what this issue raises is, what specifically should be the role of government in your view? You are the largest private employer in Nigeria. If we are looking to create jobs and create industries that employ a lot of people, is the framework that the unit under the Vice President put together, is that the way to go? Is it about getting cheap funds from our financial institutions, or that there are a lot of other things that we should be doing that we're not doing or that we should do more of, in your view?
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here. I think there's quite a lot for us to look at what we need to do. It's not really about funds. I mean, Governor Amosu is right. It is not easy to go and do agriculture at 12%, unless you are going to plant gold. That's one. Number two, let me give you, typical example on Friday. We had a meeting with President of France. And I think, after our private meeting, we went into one general meeting for a session of an hour and a half, and I was sort of like representing West Africa. Then one gentleman from the biggest group in Algeria, so okay, fine. So what can they do to assist? The issue is that they are looking at, okay, fine, all this, migration from Africa down there, they want to try and do like a Marshall Plan to see how they could send their companies to invest heavily here. And one of the issues that we discussed was, agriculture. And he was called first to explain issues about agriculture. Luckily, I wasn't the first one that was called, because I would have said things that maybe might not really interest them. He was called, okay, fine, what are you doing on agriculture? For example, in Algeria, they met up with the demand of their tomato 95% in 4.5 years. They now produce 95%, for example, and they don't have as good land as we do here in Nigeria. They only do one season. That's number one. Number two, in terms of this, what are they getting? Any bank that you go, the government is writing, you are getting 0 interest. Okay, that's number one. Apart from 0 interest, government give subsidies of implements.
But we know what people think of subsidies in Nigeria right now, don't we?
No, but I know what I'm saying. We're not even asking of subsidy. We're asking of, this. I'm telling you what he said. Okay, then I'll come to Nigeria. Okay, so they have 0 taxation on agriculture. Imports of tractors, everything is 0. Because the only way where you can create a lot of jobs these days is not by building factories or whatever, it's by by doing agriculture. That's one of agriculture, construction, mining. These are the 3 key areas we need to look at. So when you look at it today in Nigeria, you are saying, okay, fine, if I now go and open a factory of making water in Victoria Island, I have 5 years tax holiday. And you say that, yes, I should go to somewhere in Ekiti and do cocoa or maybe do cassava. I have the same 5 years, which means if I'm doing palm oil, gestation period is almost 6 years. How can I survive based on having 5 years tax holiday? So we need to look at how can we do a major revolution in terms of participating in agriculture. If we do the right things, obviously, I think even the target of 3 million jobs in the next 2 years is too small. For a population of this much, if you look at it, we have 500,000 graduates every year from our universities. Even when you look at our, WASC intake, last 2014 was almost 1.69 million students. So how can we create these jobs? Very simple. Because Nigeria was the only country that we have passed 50 million in terms of population, and we are not self-sufficient in anything that we consume. Because, rice, we are not self-sufficient. In sugar, we import 97%. In wheat, it's almost zero. So, you can count, you can go on and on. I can keep counting things that we are not self-sufficient, on. And we're forgetting that by 2020, which is just in 3.5 years from now, we're going to be 210 million. Can you imagine us importing all what we are going to feed on?
Okay. So let me bring in Mr. Ireland in here. We're talking now about the responsibilities of government in terms of providing incentives and the right kind of policies to be able to help private sector generate jobs. I want to hear what your opinion is regarding specifically what those responsibilities are, whether you totally agree with Alhaji, and what you think the role of the private sector should be, particularly for someone who runs a business that is, international, and so you sort of have the Nigerian experience and also know how other countries have done it.
Right. Well, again, thank you for having me, and Your Excellencies, great to be with you on the panel. When you look at a multinational corporation like GE, we look at, from an investment perspective, the first thing you look at is the potential opportunity of a country over the long term, not just what's happening in the short term. So as we looked at, again, the 160 countries that we operate around the world, Nigeria is one that we have decided that we want to invest in the long term. So tied into that is a combination of economic opportunity. Then you get to the next level of what are the policies, what are the incentives, et cetera, that would drive certain types of investment within that country. And in this case, it's Nigeria. So from our perspective, it's a combination of a few things. And I think when you look at creating jobs, two things that we see. One is you need infrastructure. So if, again, we're not in the ag sector, so I don't have much to, I don't have much knowledge there. But from a standpoint of the industrialization of what we do, if we put a factory into a country, the two key things that we need are security of supply of power and security of logistics. We need to get products in and products out for our customers. We need to obviously have a power. And the higher up you go in the manufacturing spectrum, the more those become even more important. You can't shut down a continuous process of a chip factory or any of those and then expect it to start it right up and not have quality problems, et cetera. So that's a key thing. So when you look at the ability of a manufacturer like us, it's two things. One is the supply of power and logistics. The other one is to have a strong supply chain. And that's where you have the multiplier effect of an investment that we would use. So when we look at around the globe in developed markets, one GE job of a manufacturing job typically equates to 8 supply chain jobs. Mm-hmm. So that's how we look at it. And to build the supply chain, it's a combination of some of the things that Aliko mentioned, as well as the governors of incentives, policy, but you also need strong financial markets that are accessible to small and medium enterprises, because every economy is built on the SMEs. And that's really going to be the lifeblood of the Nigerian economy, as well as any others in Africa, is to build that base, because that's where the majority of the employment happens. So if we can employ a few thousand people making power generation equipment or oil and gas equipment or healthcare equipment here in Nigeria, hopefully that can get translated into a multiplier effect into the economy through the supply chain. And I think that's important. And there are ways we're doing in South Africa, we're working with partners where we're putting in some capital, as well as local banks and the government in developing a supplier development vehicle, which allows people, companies that get, we're assembling locomotives there, something that we're considering here as well. And what happens is they will go to this fund to basically get a loan below market that they can then invest in their company to supply us. And then it's kind of a virtuous circle from that standpoint, that their output to us now pays back that loan. So there's a good balance of private sector as well as public sector in that.
Let me bring you, Mr. Vice President, in again. Sir, we've heard talk from the different speakers about the sort of things that are required, from incentives to policy to the provision of infrastructure to cheap funds. I'm wondering whether the framework that has been developed is comprehensive enough and has taken all of some of these things into account. And if it has, maybe you could talk to us a little bit about the way it has exactly been laid out.
Okay. I think first thing to consider, of course, is that there is a focus on trying to ensure that it's easy to do business, to create an environment where you can actually, where for the small investor and for the large investor, you have enough incentives and an enabling environment to do business. There's no question at all that there's an issue with funding, and of course that's fairly complicated. In the first place, on account of government borrowing, it's a bit difficult for the central bank, understandably, to lend at, for commercial banks, to lend at below inflation and even possibly below the TB rates, below the Treasury bill rates. There are complications around that. And that's why, in the short term, intervention funds are what we think might work. So we're looking at intervention funds in agriculture. So we have the Anchor Borrowers Program, where we're resuscitating the Bank of Agriculture, recapitalizing, and we expect that the Bank of Agriculture and a few other banks will be able to provide some, cheap funds for agriculture, and we're already seeing that in the Anchor Borrowers Program, which Governor Bagudu mentioned. We also think that intervention funds in certain other areas might help before we're able to get the overall, monetary environment right. But in the meantime, we really, if you look at what a lot of banks are experiencing, obviously, to expect the banks to lend at sub 10% is probably going to be very difficult, having regard, especially to government borrowing, and which is something that we have to look at long term, but those are other issues. Aside from that, power is clearly, an issue that we have to deal with. And we're very focused on trying to improve the power supply situation. I'm sure that if you were following, as of February 2016, we were already at 5,000 megawatts of power, which was our incremental power program, but of course, with the vandalization of the Forcados export terminal and vandalization of several other terminals, we lost just Forcados alone, we lost 40% of gas. So really, that affected the overall program. But we think that with some of the efforts that have been made, and possibly with some stability coming to the Niger Delta, we should be able to deal with the power situation.
Let me ask you specifically about maybe fiscal policy, the sort of things that one sees in other countries, things like custom and duties that are waived, for example, things like Alaji talked about tax breaks. One of the areas you identified as a potential employer, a large employer of people, is renewables, for example. And I'm just wondering, and I know, your framework is kind of wide and it's not granular. It hasn't started going into the details, but I'm just wondering, again, are there specifics there that give people hope that this framework will eventually be able to provide the sort of, if you like, umbrella policies that would allow these sort of things to thrive and therefore generate the sort of jobs that we should be generating?
Well, I think that's what I was trying to explain, that funding is one. I was just trying to go into some of the specific details that have been mentioned, funding, infrastructure, especially power, for tax, and for duty waivers and all that. Agricultural equipment essentially is supposed to be, the duty on agricultural equipment between 0 and 5%, in most cases 0%. But you see, what you tend to find is that sometimes, for instance, I've had situations where people, when you say sometimes that a person wants to import agricultural equipment, we've had situations where what is imported, is not, would fit into any category. Mm-hmm. So, for example, somebody imports, when you have some of these duty waivers, the abuse of the duty waivers, you have someone who says, I'm supposed to be importing prefabricated greenhouses, but actually he's importing prefabricated houses, so he's not actually importing prefabricated. So there are quite a few abuses. But I think that in the implementation of the duty waivers, there are complications with that. But by and large, there are waivers on duties for agriculture and for several other such items. Because agriculture in particular, but the implementation of it may not be perfect. I know that there are complaints. I've had discussions with Alhaji Dangote, for instance, about some of these issues and all that. But I think that there are some of those incentives. Tax holidays, there are tax holidays for growing businesses, 5 years, as he's mentioned. But I think that we need to, there are areas where clearly there is need for improvement. Just as he said, there are certain areas that need longer holidays. So you can't have a one-size-fits-all for tax holidays. So there are areas where we need to revisit and revise. And part of what the Enabling Business Council is doing is looking at those incentives. And I think and Ilama, the Minister for Investment, mentioned all of that yesterday. As part of the work that PEBEC is doing, is looking at those specific areas and trying to see what we can do. And we're taking a lot of advice from the private sector about those areas. So there are, issues, but a lot of these are developing, they're evolving, and I think that we certainly will get there as we go along.
Now, often part of the complaints that I hear from people who are employing, even in this market, is that sometimes they have jobs, but there are also skills gaps. So in addition to having a large number of people who are unemployed, the fact is there are also jobs that you now can't fill because there's a skill gap. And you were talking earlier about working with Alhaji Aliko to do some training, and I think I've read somewhere that GE might be doing something similar in Calabar. And so for the private sector people, how serious is this problem, and what can be done, both from the sort of private sector but also in collaboration with the government, to make sure that where the jobs exist, the people are available that have the skills to actually fill those jobs?
Can I?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Well, I think, there are a couple of incentives which I think, in fairness, the federal government has actually given, but people don't even go and read, most of these incentives. There are a lot of incentives where you can go and train your people, and also this training can actually be tax deductible. So because, today really, I don't believe that government should now go and sort of put in their own money to revive all the vocational, training centers, which you have them all over the country. But, you can do quite a lot. Where, for example, if I now go and I build infrastructure somewhere, I can actually, have a tax credit for part of it or all of it. So we should have that kind of partnership between government and the private sector, so we can have all these our vocational, training centers to be alive. The carcass are there, and you only need some sort of small amount of money. Because even today, like for us, it's true, we had a discussion with His Excellency, the Vice President, that, okay, in terms of the construction, since they want to now go and raise bonds and co. Then it will now come to the fact that, okay, fine, if we now go into social housing, or to even meet up with our 18 million housing deficit, do we really have the workers to build these houses in Nigeria? You know, obviously, you know the answer. Majority, we are going to use most of these guys from Togo. It's okay, they are from West Africa, but we would like to develop our own people. And that's the reason why I told His Excellency that, yes, you know, at Cement Technology Institute of Nigeria, we have money which we can put in something like 15 billion and train artisans, you know, block makers, you know, plumbers, carpenters, all over the country. I mean, it's not that we'll go to government. No, the money is there, which we are looking for ways of how to train people. You know, so we've been discussing with His Excellency how to partner and also, you know, train our own, you know, people. But that's on that side. On the agriculture, when you look at it, yes, Central Bank is doing quite a lot because they've given quite a lot of people money at 9%, but through the commercial banks. Since they cannot manage the relationship, you can go to your bank will give a bond, and then they will release the money based on, you know, some 7%, some 9%, which I think in our Nigerian context, 9% is okay for agriculture. But, you know, the issue is that today, even when you have the money, now it comes down to where is the land? Over 85% of the land, arable land that we have in Nigeria, is not put to use at all. But go and try to get a land, that's when you see some issues.
Okay, now let me, I mean, there's a video that has gone viral of a young boy in Lagos talking about Chinese industries and the way they operate in this country, and how, you know, despite the fact that he's a graduate, and he was speaking, I think, generally about the experiences that people like him have, how there's no value added. He doesn't speak Chinese, they don't speak English. When they come and, you know, set up the factory or whatever, most of the skilled jobs are done by Chinese people. And when they leave, you have to then do maintenance contracts because they haven't passed on those skills. And so if we have all these incentives that Alhaji is talking about, I am just wondering, how come we are in that sort of situation where that is what obtains in the country today, even with the few jobs that are available, where we're not able to tap our resources to train our young people to actually take advantage of the few jobs that are available. And I'm happy for anybody in the panel to jump in that wants to.
Let me attempt to maybe speak to that. First, let me say that without patronizing maybe the federal government, I think somehow we are on the right path, but we should follow it through, because I think it was maybe yesterday or so, when this school feeding program, they had this session for those that will actually run the program. And when I watched the television, I saw a mammoth crowd. I was taken aback. I have to ask them, who are those people? They said those will be the suppliers of those, of even the food that they are going to even be cooking for them. So in terms of people who have to supply, maybe the plastics that they will be using for them, the spoons, it's just like the value chain that we talk about, that whatever we grow, we must process. Of course, after processing, we must package. All the logistics around it we must do. We must market. We must even transport them before it gets to the final consumer. So if you see the number of people that's on its own, one, they will give nutrition to those kids. But beyond that, look at those value chain. Look at the number of people that are there. And with what everybody is doing, all the states, I want to believe, is that we are localizing it to our people. But let me just say something, and I'm happy the VP is here, that it will be in our interest once again to make sure that we should be biased towards them, and it's towards these micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises. Yes, I know my brother is here. It will be my pleasure to have even more billionaires, even if tomorrow we are going to have trillionaires. Yes, we should have. But I would rather have 1,000 millionaires than a billionaire. I know why I'm saying that. If you see our people out there, they're there, many of them. But it's like the system caters for the big boys. The system should begin to cater for those that will be the fulcrum. Because for any nation to develop, if you neglect your middle class, your small, your micro, all of those cottage industries, they're not there. Look at even the food program that we are talking about. They're not there. So we still have to run to the big boys. No, it's not going to happen. Indeed, it is even in their interest to make sure that all of these smaller, little businesses, we make them, we make sure that they survive. Once they survive, they will take the burden off them. It's like having this PHC, primary health centers. They take the burden off maybe the general hospital and state hospitals. So people will wake up, they are with them. So the same thing with all this, creating an environment for all these small and medium-scale enterprises to thrive. Look at the young graduates that we are talking about. In Ogun State, we have the highest number of all these tertiary institutions. We have in the last count, I think, about 25 now. So about 80% of them, or even maybe even between 60 and 80, when they finish all their studies, they are in Ogun State. They don't have anything doing. So you see them every day. But the skills for us to make sure they are the employable youth. Of course, my brother will not just want to take anybody. He doesn't operate for charity. He will want somebody that is skilled. It's better for him to make sure that maybe he brings one Chinese that can do the job than getting maybe 10 that will not understand the job. But it's now, what we are trying to do? We are now making sure that we create all this vocational training, and I'm happy with what they're doing.
Okay. And they're very eager to jump in. They're kind of
what you do is this. My brother talked about, I don't want to, this is not this is not the forum for that. But he has said something about lands. But you see somebody coming in with a paper and say, I'm coming from cadastral office. You just go there and do what you like. That is not right. Because you have to look and ask, what are the plans you have for those places? Yes, our people should be encouraged. We tell them that, no, this land doesn't do anything for you if there's there. Even before we are born, lands are there, doing nothing. Okay. So it is in our interest to make sure that happens.
Let me ask Mr. Ireland to quickly respond before we go to Alaji. Yeah,
I just want to make a couple comments on the training question, because I think it's critical. And the aspect of having, the local capability. We definitely, as Alhaji said, we need artisan training, vocational training. We need the people that can do that kind of work, as well as the engineers and the business people as well. So the training piece is critical. When you also look at putting in factories or whatever, the key thing is making sure you have people that can run them, et cetera. Now the other thing is, for us as a multinational company, the most expensive way to operate in a country is to bring in foreign nationals versus local. So our goal is continually trying to get as many local people as quickly as possible, and that's through training, et cetera. And we're doing that. We're going to open a facility in Calabar at late next year. We're putting in $100 million of capital expenditure right now, and that will service our gas turbines for all of Africa, not just Nigeria. So when we do rotor balancing, as an example, we used to take the rotors, which are these big, huge pieces of metal, and ship them to the United States and or Europe. Now we're going to be able to do that here in Nigeria for all of Africa. So those are the kind of things. But the key thing is we're training people for those jobs right now. If we wait until we open it and then try to train people, we're going to end up having to bring in a bunch of foreign people. So you need to balance that as you look forward in your strategies. And I think that's the key. So it's a combination of investment in physical investment, but it's also investment in training. And in GE, we spend $1 billion a year training our employees globally.
And before I bring Alhaji in quickly, I know that most emerging markets tend to have a labor market information system that enables people to match jobs with skills. How critical is that sort of thing for a place like Nigeria?
Well, I think that's a piece, but it's up to us to go find the critical people to work. And it's a combination of hiring people through a number of different ways, whether it's through university or coming out of secondary school or whatever, and then you work and train them. And not everyone's gonna make the grade, so you need to work through and make sure that you have enough employees that you go through. So we're in the 90+% of our employees in Nigeria are Nigerian. Plus, we have a lot of Nigerians elsewhere in GE, which is also part of the training that we look at. So I think that's absolutely critical in training and making sure, and it's a combination of responsibility and accountability on both the private sector as well as the government.
Alhaji?
Yes, well, thank you very much.
Sorry, Kaderi, just before Alhaji, I don't want us to miss the point that he made about land, you know, and before he answers this question, I'd like to ask what his suggestions are about accessing land, you know, because I just don't want us to miss that point.
Sir?
About this land issue.
Your
Yes,
suggestions for the land?
Well, I think, sir,
how do you think we could, yeah.
You know, sir, in private, I've seen you, and I said that, yes, for us to move agriculture, you need to look at where you have the entrepreneurs, you have the federal government and the state governments, and talk about land. Because federal government, they have fantastic policies, yes, but they don't have land.
Yeah.
Governors have land.
So the land belongs to the states.
So
And I think no matter how much of a good policy that you have, where we need to start is to start from the land. So I think that is one. The other side, Your Excellency, you know, to also explain to my brother, you know, Governor Amusu, is that you don't create, or SMEs, they don't survive without the big corporations. The big corporations are the ones that create those SMEs. And for example, as we wanted to help, a few years back, we signed with Bank of Industry, where we said that we are ready to give 10 billion. We gave them the 2.5 billion, where we say lend to these small businesses at 0 interest, but you match it and charge your 10%. So somebody can actually go and access those funds, and there are still funds there with them, which we have given to them, where the interest is at 5%. Then the same thing with what Governor Bagudu said. He's right. You know, really, even 20,000 is a lot of money in some areas in the north, where 10,000 for anywhere in Nigeria can transform somebody's life. And we are giving to some states. You know, we are doing some 3 in the north. You know, some, this is now the next one we are doing southeast. We just did Lagos and gave Lagos 400 million naira that was given to 40,000 women, 10,000, which is okay. They can go and increase their, this is free, it's not a loan. So we do quite a lot also from our foundation in trying to help, because we cannot really be the only big guys surviving. The small ones too, they have to survive. Without them surviving, we cannot even run a profitable business.
But the way you put it, I'm sure there are people who think you're trying to defend your privilege, and I want to open it up to the crowd, to the audience, sorry. But before we do, just one last question for the governor of Kebbi. As a governor who controls land, right? What can you do? What are the likely things that should or could happen so that people like Alhaji would get the land that they need to do these big agricultural programs that they want to do? What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you. Seldom investors want the best of land with the best infrastructure that is already existing. I don't blame them. They are private sector participants. They want to move quickly and realize value quickly. But unfortunately, sometimes for state governors, I don't hold brief for all of them, but we also think the big people, the big guys, should go to where they will put in some money and develop infrastructure on the land, rather than where the farmers are using, which is quite the pretty much more developed infrastructurally. So there is this conflict between, yes, you want the big-time investors to come, but you don't want to push the little farmer away from where he's farming. You want the big investor to go where he will put in more money and help in developing infrastructure and
creating the value on the land.
Okay. All right, so we'll take...
Sorry. Let me just add that for agriculture, it's next to nothing. I mean, 1,000 naira, you can have whatever you want to have. But for my brother, Aliko, he will want it at 1,000, it's not possible. I've given him land, we continue to give him land. But if it is for agric, it is 1,000, no problems. Even if he wants everything, we will give. But for other things, it must be at the commercial rate.
Okay, so we have a few minutes for questions. Who has the microphone?
Do you have the cost of the land?
So, two gentlemen in front, then the gentleman in the red hat in the middle, the lady there in the middle, the lady in the green scarf there, and then we'll come back to the panel and take another round after that, yes? So please tell us who you are, and please do keep it short so we get in as many people as possible.
Your Excellencies, my name is Professor Sheikh Majibola, President Chartered Youth of Bankers of Nigeria. My question still borders on agri and the available incentives. As a farmer in my state, we struggle year in, year out to get from fertilizer to chemicals. We don't get. They don't trickle down to the grassroots farmers and small-scale farmers like ourselves. After struggling here and there, we are still asked to go to the so-called black market to get some of these items. Maybe we need to redefine the distribution template from the federal to the state to the local government. How do they trickle down to those who can encourage employment of 10, 15, 30 Nigerians? As of today, it's not there. We need to redefine that template. Secondly, on the issue of even equipment and machines for processing, we have some local fabricators. I know one in Ibadan, Esadis, Iwo Road. He has been in this business for the past 30 years. I've bought from him. The machines are working fine. But people like that, manufacturers, fabricators of local equipment, they don't operate, they don't have the opportunity to operate beyond the cubicle. Maybe we need to create local fairs. Some weeks back, everybody was to China for a trade fair. We have those who have the experience, who have been in this kind of business for some years.
Thank you, sir.
Maybe we need to create a platform for them
Thank you, sir.
to be able to demonstrate that.
Thank you, thank you.
Your Excellencies, all protocol observed. My name is Ifat Onejeme, Commissioner for Finance, Anambra State. My governor sends his apologies. He couldn't make it. I would have been here today. But I'd just like to add to what has been said. On the issue of land, I think a number of state governments have gone ahead, and especially I'll use the example of my state to deal with how to make land easily available to investors. For example, we've set up...
You see that only one person is clapping.
No. I think Anambra State is very focused on attracting investments to the state. We started with setting up institutions to deal with this because we know land is a very difficult matter. So we set up Anambra State Investment Promotion and Protection Agency, an IPA, to help anybody who wants to come and invest. That cuts down your time of trying to go through and around ministries, departments, and agencies. It's a one-stop shop. Secondly, the governor also set up a land acquisition committee, which has dealt with acquiring land from communities. So an investor doesn't have to interface with communities. You come in, there's a land bank, you tell us what you want to do. If it's on agriculture, we've done soil tests across the state. We know what can grow where. We don't do politics with agriculture. And therefore, anybody who comes and you tell us what you want to grow, we'll tell you the available land on the map of Anambra State, where it's available.
Okay,
So
without
that's dealing
making
with
you
that.
a member of the panel, if I may, because you are a commissioner, I think,
Yes,
in
in
Anambra State. So how do you resolve this conflict that the Governor Atiku referred to of sort of protecting the small, indigenous farmers from big bad wolves like Alhaji Aliko?
No, I think everybody is part of the value chain. We have another institution that was set up, Anambra Small Business Agency. Now that agency, its seed capital was the CBN Intervention Fund, $2 billion for MSMEs. And the government is adding more money there. That targeted SMEs and micro enterprises. We think and we believe that you still need the Aliko Dangotes, and you still need the small guys. So what government needs to do is to build the enabling connectivities between these economic agents. And so we're trying to get Aliko to come and do some things in Anambra State. We know that if he does those things, the supply chain effect, the value chain effect will be tremendous. So those are some of the things that I think states, as we say in Anambra State, the federal government, and I'm happy Aliko mentioned it, has a lot of very good policies, but doesn't have land. So I sit in my office, for example, the Commissioner of Lands, and somebody shows up with a piece of paper. Some federal agency has said they are going to allocate, and we say, we are waiting for you. Let's see how you're going to get the land. You can't get the land without coming to sit down with us, and we see. So,
Thank you.
for example, communities, just final point.
You
sorry.
get.
Communities have perpetual investment.
I want to just get a few
No,
more,
there
and
is,
then
I
we'll
know,
come back
but
to
you know, there is a solution to what Governor said. You know, the solution is that normally even big guys, when they go there, you just don't go and, what we normally do when we have the farm, I mean, we bought Savannah sugar and we'll be there for some time. In Savannah, what we have done, even our own farm that we own, we've given about 30% to outgrowers. The outgrowers, they have seedlings, they have everything we are giving them to finance them, and we give them a guaranteed price of the product.
But that is a good example. Don't we end up, though, without competition? Because you end up as being the only supplier of sugar in the country.
No, I mean, obviously, that's what we are doing. Yeah.
So isn't that
That's
part
what,
of...
no. But, you know, let me tell you, there is, okay, let me give you an example. In Jigawa State, for example, we have outgrowers 100%, where we have given them seedlings, we've given of rice, and they are growing the rice on their own. And right now, we have even imported a rice that will give them 9 tons minimum per hectare. And we're giving them, we don't have any farm, we're not involved, but we are giving them the seedlings, we are financing them, and then we are giving them a guaranteed price.
Okay.
And that's what we are doing.
I mean, there's a whole new conversation.
Okay, just
we
to
can have
end,
around,
sorry,
but let me,
just to
just
end.
finish up and, yeah.
On the Chinese question,
Yes.
I think knowledge transfer is very important. When we sign agreements with investors, and they're foreign investors, there's a specific clause there. One, on what you can use the land for. It has to be for that project, so you can't switch after you've got the land. Secondly, there has to be a well-defined way of knowledge transfer to Nigerians, so that it's not that you hold us to ransom. Thirdly, the community in which the land is located has a perpetual equity interest in the project. So the combination of these clauses has helped us to be able to have peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a gentleman in the red hat. Yes.
Your Excellency, all protocols observed. Chief A.B. Odega is my name. First of all, let me start by saying that I sympathize with the Vice President. He's here. I cannot see any minister, whether for employment or whatever, here with him. And he's struggling to defend the whole thing. You're welcome, sir. Governor Musu has said a lot of things, and I admire him. I am praying fervently that you'll be able to struggle with Lagos so that you take some of these people who are asked in Lagos into Ogun State, whether business or for private enterprise. I can say for two things. I wish I have 2 hours to talk.
No, you don't.
Two things only.
Very briefly, please. There are a lot of people wanting to talk.
Yes, two things only.
Yeah? Okay.
One, you were talking about Nigerians not being able to feed themselves. I can tell you that food produced in Nigeria today can feed the whole Nigeria. Right. The problem is how do you get the food? And until you address the issue of deurbanization, it's only in urban areas you have hungry people. Go to the villages, they don't know what you're talking about. It's only money they cannot get.
No, actually, let me correct you there because research that was conducted, including by the Job Creation Unit, shows that rural poverty is higher than urban poverty.
It depends on the definition of that poverty. So money have, food they have.
So I need you to hurry up.
So that is one. The last one.
Go on.
The last one is about creation of jobs. Creation of jobs.
Okay, sir, do you want me to stop you?
Want.
You need to hurry up. There are a lot of people waiting to speak. Please. Please.
Maybe I should hand over the microphone to you. You gave it to me.
Okay, thank you. The next lady, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
I stand on existing protocol, and many thanks to the Nigerian Economic Summit.
We can't hear you. Can you speak up, please?
I'm Natasha Akpoti, and I'm the founder of Builders Hub Impact Investment Program. It's an initiative which tries to promote local industries. I'll call it cottage industries. It's an honor to be here. And as I sat here listening to discussions, I found it quite worrying why the cottage industry was not mentioned specifically. We all know that in Africa, and particularly stronger economies in the world, the cottage industry is the backbone of every economy. Italy, we have the leather works. Switzerland, wristwatches. China, before the advent of the advanced technologies, we had the tea and the porcelain. In France, we have wine and so on. What do we have in Nigeria? Mr. Vice President, my questions will be directed to you. If you recall, sometime last year, I was at your office and I made a brief presentation which captured your attention. And you told me specifically, it was a wonderful idea, but I should go back, develop the content and the market segments. And you told me, Natasha, I'm going to look at it
okay,
page by page.
Okay, you need to give us context.
I'm going to go there, please.
Hang on. People have to be able to follow the conversation. So if you are talking about a private conversation, you need to be able to say what was this idea, for example. Otherwise,
in general,
it doesn't make sense. Do you understand what I'm saying?
In general, cottage, everyone probably understands what the cottage industry means. And I would say specifically, it's the crafts and arts that existed pre-colonial era. The blacksmiths, cloth weavers, the carpenters, and so on. For example, Nigeria tends to focus a lot on agriculture once they think grassroots. But not everyone is farmers. If you look at Nigeria in 100, 200 years ago, we have very robust blacksmithing, that's the metalsmithing, and there are no incentives that are existing for them. The wood carvers, go to Benin. You talk about the strength, the bronze carving. In Bida, we've got the Bida metal works. Okay. What exists for them? So that was what I'm talking about. And the Vice President said, in order to create that aspect, I need to present the business plan. And then I approached...
So we will get him to answer now. One last thing before I come back to the panel. Let me take at that end. I'm sorry, Natasha, you had all this time, so you should have said what you wanted to say. Yes, sir.
My name is Azuka Ijekeye.
Yes.
I represent MSMEs. I'm a light manufacturer and 50% of Nigeria's economy. Mr. Vice President, I shall be mentioning 4 problems and possible solutions for SMEs.
You can't
The
read
first
an
one,
essay.
it's going to be very short. The first one, sir, light manufacturing. There are at least 5 light manufacturing shops or factories owned by states dotted around the nation, covered in dust. Sir, if we get these up, 10 million, 15 million each in each state, we will have created back our manufacturing. It was mentioned about the welder, the fabricator. So we need to go to fabrication to make my second problem, farm gate machines. The farm gate machines will process all these agricultural products. They will be made by welders. They will be made by people who use lathe machines to turn tools. That is number 2. Number 3, tax. MSMEs need the economic team to please, if only for, I don't know, 1 million turnover and above, complete tax forgiveness. Complete tax forgiveness. You want to give money to people, but if you forgive their tax, they will all register with FIRS. You need to get us into the tax basket. If you forgive 1 million and above, you will get everybody into the tax basket. That is number 3. The final one is what everybody talks about, low interest rate, low interest rate, low interest rate. That I don't know how to say it. I said it last year at the summit. I'm saying it again this year. Federal government, CBN, BOI, the development bank, and the commercial banks need to come together. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now, to come back to the panel, and I don't know, sir, do you want to start responding? I also know your Minister of Agriculture and FCT Minister are also here, or would you like them to? Yeah. Minister of Agriculture, yes, sir. There was a question about the distribution template for fertilizers. Microphone over there, please.
Your Excellency, the Vice President, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First, there are ministers here. Since we're not called upon to be on the stage, we have to maintain our places. So the Vice President is not alone. Now, on the distribution of fertilizers, you will know that my predecessor in office actually established a new system of fertilizer distribution and marketing to remove the inherent corruption in the system of government purchasing and distributing. 2, we've also done a soil map of Nigeria. We know now what fertilizer fits what crop in what state. That exercise is not yet complete. We have a broad map, details are coming, and they'll be published in newspapers shortly. 3, manufacturers of agricultural processing equipment are doing a wonderful job in this country. There will be an exhibition here in February next year, and you'll be invited to watch what wonders Nigerians have done. And finally, the response by Nigerians to the call to invest in agric has been so massive. I like to say here, we're really proud of Nigerians. God bless you all.
Okay, thank you. Before we move away from agriculture, if I could ask the governor of KV State, you started talking about the value chain that you get, so I'm talking from farm to market. It has been suggested that in rural economies, for example, there's a need for some sort of body, some sort of economic development corporation that would drive all these things. And I know that part of the planning of the framework that the VP's office has put together includes that. Do you see a value in that sort of framework? And maybe both you and the governor of Ogun can answer.
Let me just use this opportunity to acknowledge the tremendous political will that is driving the whole agricultural value chain, from the president to the Vice President who was meeting with farmer groups, who is meeting with agricultural business groups. And about 2 weeks ago, when we are in Zamfara, accompanying him, the Vice President actually broke tradition and said he wants to go to the market and see what is happening to the agricultural produce. So I just felt that is as best as it can get. And therefore, in commenting on the model that we have in place, I think one has to start with acknowledging that. The model is being calibrated and evolving. The Anchor Borrowers Program has done wonders. For example, in Kebbi State, we have assessed about close to 17 billion naira, and we believe that the value of the output generated is in excess of 100 billion, and creating over 300,000 jobs. What the companies have participated. Companies in Kebbi State, we have had companies who have taken Anchor Borrowers facility and have invested in farmers. They are working with farmer groups. We have UMZA out of Kano. We have Labana, which is locally based. And they are working with farmers. They provide all the inputs to them, and they uptake all their produce. And that has been, it's working quite well. And we have had so many other investors now at different stages of setting up such partnership, which we believe will solve, is taking care of all the problems, storage, marketing, and providing inputs as and when due for the farmers.
Without sounding repetitive, you know, I've actually mentioned here what the home grow this food school feeding programs, what it has done. Indeed, let me now just weave that around what is happening in maybe quote-unquote agriculture. All the eggs that will be consumed there. Of course, we have these young ones in each of our various wards, not even local government or LCDA, wards. We now encourage them that you must produce these eggs, so that we will not go to any other place to say we are buying the eggs. The vegetables that will be given. Now we want to encourage them to have fish. Yes, some days they will, maybe 3 times in a week, it must be fish. We're encouraging them going into this fish farming. So with that, you could see that whereas they thought that all they were doing was to give food for our young ones, but what they are doing, the chain, the value chain that is there, shows clearly that they are even creating so much job for people. And by that, they are creating wealth.
Okay, now, because we're running out of time, I want to quickly, Natasha was talking about cottage industries.
Okay. Thank you.
No, but let me include, because there's also Twitter comments about it, so I want to read some of what is being said. Somebody is asking, how come cottage industries pay the same fees as corporates? And is that really a way that we can drive growth there? And then another person says, what are we doing about NAFDAC issues? Why does it take so long to get certification by NAFDAC? And what I'd like is to use this opportunity to actually get everybody to sort of do their final remarks and end with the Vice President. So if you speak, we then go back to Alhaji Aliko, Mr. Ireland, and the Honorable Governor of Kebbi and end with the Vice President, please.
Well, thank you. Let me conclude by saying that the haves will not enjoy what they have if they fail to take care of the have-nots. And clearly it's happening now. So we thank the federal government with the initiatives they are bringing on board, and all the state governments. It is in our interest. If you get to a point that you cannot even go to your state, then you know there's a crisis, because that is what is looming large now, but for all the safety nets that they are creating. I did mention that cottage industries are key. I don't know whether she was following while I was making my presentation, that until when we get all of this, this will be the catalyst for development. This is the premise on which all these even big boys will rest on. Because if they are not there, we'll be chasing shadows. And I'm happy that you brought that up. Whatever you said you have submitted to the VP, I'm sure they will get back to you. But I'm happy that some of our ministers are here and the VP is here anyway, supporting the cottage industries and all of those. I don't want to even believe it's maybe by way of even tax relief that he's talking about. If we have maybe single digits, maybe you said 3%, I'm not even saying zero, because zero will probably mean that people will not know that, oh, I have to work hard more. When you even get all of these multilateral funds, they encourage you that, yes, however small, let them know that at least we're working and at least you must make some profit, because it will not make any sense if they go into any business and they're not making money. They must make. So maybe to reduce it to maximum between maybe 1 and 3. It is here in Nigeria when you will see interest rate jumping from maybe 15 to 20. In other same environment, you see basis point, 2 basis, 3 basis point, people will shout. Okay, so sir, I think once we get the interest low for them, people will not even be complaining about all these tax reliefs that you are talking about. Some other area, and I'm happy that the Minister for Agriculture is here, and that is in the area of tools, implements, because look at where I'm coming from. To clear, even land clearing alone is about 60, 70% of even whatever I want to do in agriculture.
Thank you, sir. So, Mr. Governor, your summation, please.
Anyway, thank you for giving me this opportunity to be here.
Thank you, sir.
I think I've already mentioned the political will, and Alhaji Aliko has alluded to a key element, which is what is happening elsewhere. We are not alone, we are competing with others. So in what we are trying to achieve, other countries are competing with us. Just 2 weeks ago, there was a complaint lodged by the United States at the World Trade Organization against China that rice, wheat, and corn subsidies in China are distorting the markets, particularly those of American wheat farmers and rice farmers. Since its creation 15 years ago, over 405 such complaints have been lodged at the World Trade Organization by countries that are protesting the conduct of others. That we have this clarity of policy direction will now enable us to confront and compensate for those distortions that are coming from outside. Just last week, again, I was opportune to be at a press conference where NAFDAC presented the report of their test on rice that is coming through the land borders, which they concluded 90% of it is unfit for human consumption. Last but not the least, this thing requires enormous amounts of money. It's not a painless transition, but the important thing is that it's a local money transition, and we are better off pacing it and putting enough money in it, and we can achieve the goal that we set for.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ireland?
Yes, thank you. Not to put fuel on the fire on the land issue, but it's also an issue in renewable power. Whether it's wind farms, solar farms, we run into the same issue across Africa. But I want to talk about the employment issue, which is why we're here. It's an African problem. We all know the youth bulge that's occurring. I live in Kenya. We have the same issues there as does Nigeria on making sure that we have enough jobs and employment opportunities for the population, especially the youth population that's coming through schools, et cetera. So I think, again, just in summing up some of the points I made, I think number one is having a consistent policy that works for, and accountable, that works for both the private sector and government. 2 is continued training, which is absolutely essential, and again, that has to be on both sides of the equation. And then 3, I think the biggest thing is continuing to make companies invest locally and hire locally and build out that supply chain and get a multiplier effect around all of the economies. As Aliko said, big companies help drive small and medium enterprises, and it's a two-way street. We need them as much as they need companies like ours. And for us, it's a combination of doing that, putting our money where our mouth is, and continuing to drive that economic growth. Nigeria is through in a cycle now, but I think from a long-term perspective, it's a great place to invest. We're going to be here, and I think if we do these things, we can continue to increase the employment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Alaji?
Well, thank you very much. Well, on a closing note, I think one of the things that we need to look at, I was telling somebody, while I was entering here that since 1978, when I go to Lagos, that was the first time I started hearing about diversification. So we're still talking about diversifying the economy 38 years now. And I hope next year we're not going to sit down and talk about the same thing. Number two, to answer also the professor, the farmer, my good friend, government too, they have actually done quite a lot. And I think by end of next year or so, people who are going to sell fertilizer, you buy it even cheaper than what you are buying today. That's number one. Number two, we'll be begging you to buy. So there won't be scarcity of fertilizer anymore. We have 3 million tons of capacity coming into the market by end of next year. And this is also thanks to the policies of the federal government. At least this is not a land. So so number three, we need to really be very, very serious. And this is really on a serious note. People who are hoping to say that oil is going to go back up to $70, $80, is just not going to happen. There's so much oil everywhere. And I think this is a temporary measure where now you sit at 53. I'm praying that for it to get to 100. But you see, today, if oil will move to $90, none of us will talk about recession again. We'll go back to our normal ways. So I think for us to go through this long haul of low oil prices will push us into the real sector, which is agriculture, construction, and all the rest.
Thank you very much, Alhaji.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Vice President, sir.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to just thank everyone for their participation in this conversation. One of the important things I think that has emerged, at least in the past year, is the great enthusiasm that I see everywhere for doing things Nigerian, for local production, employment generation, and all of those kinds of things. And talking to practically everyone, talking to big investors, the big businesses, talking to youth groups that are interested in technology, talking to farmers, and talking to market men and market women. There's a great deal of enthusiasm. Everybody knows that this country has tremendous potential, and there's so much that can be done. I think that what we really need to do is continuing these engagements, teasing out what the issues are, and trying to deal with those issues as we go along. You've talked about NAFDAC. We're engaging every one of the agencies that are responsible for facilitating trade, facilitating business. They have to be up to scratch. They've got to encourage business. It's our business to make sure that we promote business, promote enterprise, because the only way to create employment is not by direct creation of jobs by government. It's by private sector being encouraged to create these opportunities. So that's our focus. I think for us, it's a day-by-day thing. All of the ministers who are seated here, we're constantly engaged in this conversation. I mean, the Minister of Agriculture will tell you, or Trade and Investment. In the past 2-3 days, we've been to the Minister of Investment, the Minister of State, and I have been in 2 different local exhibitions on cottage industries. And when Natasha was talking about cottage industries, we've been in 2 since Friday. We've been in 2 different exhibitions, or even 3. So there's a lot going on, and I think that continuing the engagement is important. But I want to assure everyone that the government, the federal government of Nigeria, and many of the state governments that are working with us are very focused on this same issue of ensuring that we're able to improve the environment for doing business, increase opportunities, so that we can employ, the vast majority of our young people who need employment, encourage big business, encourage small business, encourage cottage industries. That's our focus, and will remain our focus.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President, sir. And perhaps we've run out of time, so I can't do a big summary, but in summation, just to let people know, both at the state level, state government, and also, I think, private sector, of the existence of this framework, which is comprehensive and which allows for the opportunities to harness all the comparative advantages that different sectors have, that different regions have, so that people can actually begin to create jobs, but also build the skill set that we need. Please help me thank the panel again. I think they did an awesome job. Thank you so much. And I hand you over back to you, sir.
Anytime Kadara is on the stage, it's a different ballgame. She has generated enough heat to warm this environment and enough light for us to see the future. Chairman, DG, the two honorable ministers in charge of budget and national planning, can you please join us up here for the group photograph, please? And while the photograph is going on, let me also say that we have just 15 minutes for the tea break, and a lot of the issues and questions that we're raising during the panel discussion will probably be looked at in more detail at the Situation Room. We have the parallel insight sessions, 9 in all. The first one on manufacturing. Okay, yes, 7. The first one on manufacturing, if you're interested in that, we'll be holding at Ogun, Nasarawa Room, Wing A, Floor 02, main building of the hotel. Manufacturing, Ogun, Nasarawa, Wing A, Floor 02, the main building of the hotel. In fact, all the inside sessions will be holding the main building of the hotel. Then services, Oshun Room, Wing B of the main building of the hotel. Agro-processing, Lagos, Kogi. Lagos, Wing B, Floor 01 of the main hotel. ICT, Plateau, Wing A, Floor 01, main building. Creative industry, Kogi Room, Wing B, Floor 01, floor the main hotel. Micro and small enterprises, Borno and Anambra, Wing B, Floor 02. Inventors and innovators, Cross River Imo, Floor 02 of the hotel. So everybody should reconvene here at 1 p.m. Okay, but anything you want us to do, because we do it so well, we will do it. Amazing. This is probably the best. Well. Okay. Please, we can go out through the back door, please. And lunch is at 1 p.m. That means all of the situation rooms must end before 1. Lunch is at 1 p.m.
Nigeria, with a population of over 175 million, is the most populous nation in Africa and the 7th most populous in the world. The population of Nigeria is to reach approximately 200 million by 2019 and over 400 million by 2050, according to World Bank estimates, making Nigeria one of the top 5 populous countries in the world. Depending on how Nigeria develops, that huge increase in population will either be an asset or liability. For decades, we have portrayed our country in colorful terms, promoting our culture, music, happiness, and wonderful locations to the world.
Nigeria and the Nigerian people love wonderful and great things. You will find our exuberance as a people and our culture and tradition does portray our knack, our desire for great things, for good things.
Out of every black person you see anywhere in the world is a Nigerian. And once you say a Nigerian, it has its own outstanding qualities. Because we come from an environment already where you need to work so hard, you need to struggle, you need to do anything you can, whether you are doing the right thing to survive.
I don't think we have 5 of this kind of a country in the world where people just wake up, they want to do things, and they just go for it.
We touted our country as the largest and most important country in Africa, the giant of Africa.
Nigeria has been defined as a giant of Africa. Nigeria is a nation that is so much endowed with resources, human and physical.
Nigeria is a land full of opportunities. It is enormously rich in resources. It has an enormous agricultural potential. It has a huge population.
With all these natural and human assets, many Nigerians wonder why our country today is still bedeviled by the challenges of development.
Nigeria is a great country. And Nigeria is a country that has the potential to be even greater country, especially leading the African continent as a nation. We have everything that it takes. We have just not taken the time to get disciplined and do what it is that is going to make us the giants that we are as a nation.
The Nigerian Economic Summit last year looked at the tough decisions that Nigeria needs to make if it's serious about turning around the fortunes of the country. As a follow-up, this year's theme is Made in Nigeria, is one that will look at how we can immediately start to diversify our economy and what we need to do.
If we don't produce ourselves and patronize ourselves, we'll forever be dependent on finished products. And one part of the government cannot say, we want to encourage local content, local this, while some other parts will now say that they don't have capacity.
If we don't have a private sector-driven economy, we really can't have the kind of growth and the speed of growth that we require. So the government must, as a matter of policy, say, what can we do, must we do, should we do, to ensure that the private sector really succeeds?
That is not as difficult as it seems. It's about paying attention to details, getting the little things, big things, and the long-term things, to think about them all together, and then to stick to the plan.
I honestly would urge, let us do these plans. Let us not attach them to names. Let everybody be committed to them, and let the competition between parties be who can implement it better.
This country can move well in 6-9 months' time if writing is done. Government should implement what is there already as a policy, which is use what you have.
Key to how we revive our economy will be Nigeria's agricultural sector and repositioning it as the mainstay of our national economy.
If you want to be a world competitive economy, it is about the people. And that means you need to invest on a world-class level in your education.
Let's go back a little. When the civilian administration of President Obasanjo came into limelight in 1999 and ushered in democracy, it seemed that Nigeria was poised to deliver the dividends that its citizens had been waiting for. The hope for a better Nigeria.
The most crucial role in the development of a nation is the role played by government. It is government that sets and defines and develops the policy. It is government that in the end decides where to allocate the resources. It is government that at a certain moment is responsible for consistency in policies, and that is something very important for people that are doing business.
Some Nigerians are forging ahead, and there are sectors in our economy that are working, growing, and taking on the challenge of being made in Nigeria products and services.
Nigeria, we have everything, only that we haven't tapped them. But with this situation of foreign exchange, everybody will go down. Like me, I myself now, I'm thinking what to do to export. And I believe with the way it's in my mind, in the next few months, I must get something from Nigeria to export.
That the e-commerce sector has been growing for many years is obvious, with companies like Flyboku, Wakanow, Jumia, Konga, and payment platforms like InterSwitch and Remita.
Science and technology is not just the way of the future, that future is now. The reality is we've over-depended on a very commodity-based economy, whether you even talk about agriculture, which we're focused on today now as an alternative to crude oil. You know, this whole idea of what we're talking about made in Nigeria is not just about, yeah, we are great people, fashion, music, made in Nigeria, but made in Nigeria for me is more about the environment. How can we make the environment conducive for entrepreneurs and innovators to innovate and create value?
It is important that the enabling environment to actually do business is improved. Running a business in Nigeria is tough. You have businesses having to provide their own power. It's difficult to access resources. Labor is also difficult in some sectors. So I think a combination of fiscal incentives and also creating the right enabling environment would support this goal of Made in Nigeria.
Our creative industries, film, fashion, and music are creating many jobs and opportunities for Nigerians in Nigeria and across the world, including the many cottage industries servicing that sector, which have the potential for turning around the fortunes of many Nigerians.
Another opportunity clearly is the entertainment industry. Fast growing, lots of potential, has brought in so many people, and it's given Nigeria a new lease of life in terms of the image. So when you say you're a fashion designer, when you say you're a software person, people are, because they now understand that this is what Nigerians are actually doing to earn a living. And it's bringing the world's eyes to this place. Now, what is the policy that we need to drive to encourage people, give careers, and ensure that people are trained to live off this craft?
I've actually benefited, from state government, and this is because they see value in what I do. You know, it is not difficult to convince them. It is purely, okay, this is an entrepreneur, he resides and functions in Lagos, he's adding value, to what we do, and they are collecting tax from me, so it's like putting my money back in the system.
The telecommunications sector continues to grow, and its capacity for generating offshoots, such as value-added services, VAS, music streaming, app development, and content services are creating new vistas of opportunity for many young people in the country. Charles Ugu is the CEO of Ebony Agro Farms in Abakaliki, who has made a success of packaging and selling local rice to the Nigerian community. He built up his business from scratch through self-help and providing his own infrastructure.
Nigeria is a virgin territory, as you can see. Everything you produce, you can sell in this country. The key thing is to drive the investments, to focus on some areas, drive those investments, whether it is in food supply, whether it is in infrastructural development, whether it is domestic household products. In every sphere you look at, there's a demand. But it is now necessary for Nigeria to begin to produce those goods that we import at the moment. That is part of it. There's a demand for products, there's a demand for services. So the key thing, therefore, is to make the investments. The investments you make then drive employment, drive growth, and drive economic prosperity.
The problem we're having in Nigeria today is just policy problems, policy and implementation. If you wake up today now, they tell you the policies are there. Are we implementing it? No. So by the time, until we begin to process what we produce, that's when agriculture will be a solution to our problem.
Ibukun Awoshika is one of Nigeria's foremost businesswomen. She reflects on some of her experiences in producing made-in-Nigeria products.
I've been producing furniture for 28 years. As far as I know, by Nigerian regulation today, since 2004, furniture has been banned in Nigeria. The question you need to ask yourself is, where is it in Nigeria that you cannot, where in Nigeria can you not find imported furniture? But from day one, I don't think there's a day from when we follow that instruction out of faith. But till tomorrow, there's furniture everywhere. The sad part is this: you're manufacturing out of commitment to a nation.